Welcome to Breeze Time with Kathy. Oh, we followed the story of Mary and Joseph. We've traced their footsteps from Nazareth to Bethlehem now. And we're here on the outskirts of Bethlehem. So once again, I'd like to share with you from my travels to the Holy Land and the places that are associated with the Christmas story as we continue with Bethlehem. The modern city of Bethlehem is located in the Palestinian territory. It's located about 12 miles from Jerusalem, and right now it has a population of about 25,000 people. Almost all are Arab. It used to have a majority of Christians, but the number of Christian Palestinians has dwindled here. Many of them have immigrated and left Palestine because of the difficult circumstances there. And but it is still a very vibrant and active city, though it is suffering economically. I was really surprised that still outside of Bethlehem you can find a hillside like this. This is the view from Shepherd's Field. We're overlooking a hillside. Unfortunately, I was there in July, so the hillside is very brown and dry. But it's easy to imagine that it would be greener, not as green as like I used to think of as the countrysides and in English countrysides or things like that when I was a kid. But you can imagine easily how shepherds would be out here tending their flocks by night. And in that huge open sky above, there would be all the angels. It was really pretty impressive for me the very first time I was there, and I still love sharing it when we visit. One that's you can see this is a traditional shepherd wearing traditional garb, and this is pretty much what you could have expected at the time of Jesus. Things hadn't changed all that much. These are sheep here. Probably some of them are goats, but because it's hard to tell the difference between a sheep and a goat with the breeds that are most common among the flocks of Israel and Palestine. There's a grotto there, and it's a cave. Though shepherds used to use caves as barns, that was the most common thing. And though we don't believe this is the cave where Jesus was, it may have been one where this one has been used to shelter the shepherds and their flocks for thousands of years. And so it is a shrine there dedicated to the shepherds. There's also a more modern church built there. This is built by Barlucci. We saw a church of his when we were in when we were in Nazareth, and this particular church, I think he designed dozens of churches all over the Holy Land. He was a Franciscan architect. This is very typical of his style, is he tried to have the architecture of the shrine or the chapel reflect the place. This shape is reminiscent of a Bedouin tent, and so it is to honor the shepherds. It has murals that are nicely done murals. This is, of course, the angels and the shepherds. I love the way they're coming back and they're rejoicing, having seen the newborn Jesus. And this is the stable. And here it very nicely shows that it would have been more like a cave at the time of Jesus. On to Bethlehem itself, to the Church of the Nativity. And we are coming, this is looking out from the entrance to the plaza in front of the Church of the Nativity to Manger Square in the heart of Bethlehem. And then I turned around and shot toward the church. This is the church of the Nativity. You think, my goodness, it looks kind of strange. This church was founded by Helena, the mother of Constantine. She came in about the year 325 to the Holy Land, and at the behest of her son, she identified sites of Christian pilgrimages and built appropriate churches. And this church was started by Helena. Now, you may think that the door looks small. That's because it is. The door used to be much larger, and the door used to be much larger. It used to come up, oh, huge. But the problem with that was that then people would ride their horses in there, and they would ride carts in there and loot the church in times of upheaval and battle. So they made the door smaller to try and avoid it. This is this right here is the famous bell tower you'll see. If you watch Christmas in Bethlehem, if you watch on Christmas Eve, they'll show you when the bells ring to midnight to announce Christmas and the birth of Christ and the start of the Mass to celebrate the birth of Jesus. At that time, under usual circumstances, the plaza here in Manger Square would be packed with people celebrating. So it's actually a very impressive set of bells, and I still am so glad I got to hear them in person. Well, back to the place right here where the entrance is. You can see that the entrance used to be much larger. I think I've got excuse me. Yeah, I've got the entrance used to be much larger. And looking down from above, you can see that the church is shaped in the form of a cross, a cruciform church, very common for early Christianity on. It's for the church to be in the shape of a cross. This is the entrance where the entrance to the church is, with a small door, and this is this is the nave right here, and there's alcoves on either side. So here you can see the door more clearly. You can see it used to be that big. Before that, it used to be that big. Well, why is it so small now? As I said, in times of war, or people would ride their horses into the church. They would bring carts into the church and loot it. The church was founded in the year 325, is when it was built by Helena, the mother of Constantine. It was largely destroyed several times, but it is the oldest site of continuous Christian worship in the world. And this door is actually very small. Now, it's funny, it's believed that they made the door small in order to prevent raiders, and people now have to bend over and go in one by one, and that way you can't go into the church intending to loot, because you can only get in one person at a time. But now it's called the Door of Humility, and where a tradition has become so involved, as you bend over to enter, we're told to remember that Christ humbled himself to share in our humanity and to be born as a baby in Bethlehem. The entrance, this is the nave of the church, and these pillars are extremely old. This new floor, not new, that new, but more modern, was built much later because of I told you the church was, was tremendously damaged many times over the centuries. Here, these are before the murals began to be restored. But I remember the first time I walked in the church, I said, what is this? This is all open. And it is just that way. In the United States, if you had holes in your floor, you'd have to have barricades around them to keep everybody safe. But that's the way they do it. And the reason they have those holes in the floor is so you can look down and see these mosaics. These are the mosaics from the time of Helena, the mother of Constantine, from 325 when the church was built, when Christianity had just emerged from being a persecuted religion to being a legal religion within the Roman Empire, and would very shortly become the official religion of the Roman Empire. And it's amazing to me how these mosaics are so beautiful and so intact. I wish the whole church was intact. Wasn't the mosaics all looked this good, but you do get the opportunity to see the church as the earliest Christian pilgrims would have seen it. It gives you some insight as to what it would have looked like 1700 years ago. Well, as you can see, there are no mosaics here. The mosaics have been restored. This particular picture I was lucky enough to take the very first time I went to the Holy Land, and the mosaics had not been restored yet. But you can see this is the long nave of the church we saw from the roof. The high altar sits there at the head of the cross, and then there are alcoves on either side. And this right here, there were mosaics all along this area, and they are in the process of being restored. The mosaics restored are absolutely gorgeous, and they're doing incredible work to restore these mosaics that date from the Byzantine period. That you can see them. This, of course, is Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And there are many things portrayed on these mosaics. One of the reasons that the church was not completely destroyed at one time, when the Persians conquered in about the 4th century, they destroyed every place of Christian worship in all the Holy Land. But when they came to the church in the Nativity, they saw murals that depicted Persian kings coming to worship. And they said that since their ancestors worshipped here, they would not destroy it. So the 3 kings, or the 3 wise men, saved the church for 400 and something years later. But these angels are just, the mosaics are just beautiful. The angels are absolutely beautiful. I just can't believe that there's still people who can do this quality of work. It's wonderful to know that this kind of restoration can be done in this day and age. Now, this is the high altar. Different sections of the church are controlled by different Christian denominations. And the reason is when the church was founded in 325, there was only one Christian denomination. Everyone was just Christian. As the fissures and the splits developed, this section of the church is controlled by the is controlled by the Greek Orthodox. There's another section of the church that is maintained by the Armenian Orthodox, and then still a third section that is Roman Catholic. Now the high altar here sits right above a crypt that is below, and that was built on top of what was originally a cave. Now you see, what we're going to do next is we're going to go stand in line behind that woman in the white shirt, because that's where the line forms to go down into the grotto, to the actual cave where it is believed that Jesus was born. And you can see once again the beautiful mosaics. And there's always a line here, so at least now we have these wonderful mosaics to look at. And when the first time I went, they had not yet been restored, and they're still in the process of restoration. There's candles to be lit. It's an interesting way that they light the candles here. Everyone puts their candles tall and thin like this. And this is actually a dear friend of mine who has since gone to glory. Her name is Roy Now, and she was the pianist at my very first church. We became very close friends. And she came with me on the first pilgrimage that I led to the Holy Land in 2006. Well, as I said, we go down these rather steep steps. You got to be careful. And we go into a cave. The altar is right above us, the high altar of the church. And we go down into there. Now, when we get into there, it's really pretty amazing. These are the stairs we come down. Here is another altar right here. And there are the stairs by which we get out. And this part is a cave. Now, it doesn't look like a cave, I know. It has these what look like draperies hanging here, but in truth, they're fireproof. They're fireproof hangings to try and prevent any fires here, because unfortunately, in the 18th century, there was in the 19th century there was a fire here, and it took several lives when it was started down here in the Church of the Nativity in the grotto here itself, at the place of Jesus's birth. At the time of Jesus, though, it would have looked more like this. It would have been more like a cave, and with maybe some wood to keep the animals in. And I know we all think of a wooden stall, but if you've been to the Holy Land, you'd realize that there's not a whole lot of trees, but there's a whole lot of rocks and stone. So like any other practical people, ancient peoples 2,000 years ago made use of what was already there, and made use of stone instead of wasting wood. They used wood only for the things that they absolutely needed to use it for. So this is that altar I showed you. This spot here is the spot where tradition says that Mary gave birth to Jesus. Now, how old is this tradition? It actually goes back to the time of Justin Martyr. Justin Martyr was Bishop of Bethlehem in about the year 90. And he had gotten the word from So right here, we have the actual site of Jesus's birth. This is the altar I showed you that stood between the two staircases, the one that came down from this side, then went back up on that side. And this is the spot where tradition says that Jesus was born. This tradition actually can be traced back to about the year 900. And Justin Martyr is the first one we know of who identified this spot as the place where Jesus was born. And it was already a site of worship by that time. So it gives pretty good history. It's not quite as solid as the history we have for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, marking the place where Jesus was crucified and where he rose from the dead. But it still is very good. A fairly strong history pointing to this spot being revered at least from within 50 to 60 years of Jesus' death as the place, as where he was born. Now, I've always felt that even if it's not the original spot, there is something pretty awesome about being someplace where you know hundreds of thousands, millions of Christians over 2 millennia have gone to try and come into contact with Jesus Christ, to try and touch the life of Jesus, touch something that he touched. You can actually, if you look here, this star that marks the spot, this is a marble floor laid on top of the original floor of the cave, and right here is a hole. You can reach down and touch the actual rock floor of the cave. And when you do this powerful realization that you're just one in a long line of people who want to somehow be closer to God and touch something that he touched and connect in a very personal way. And even if it's not the right spot, you're in a line of so many other Christian believers before you. It's very powerful. These right here are all lamps, oil lamps, that are very common in the Greek Orthodox Church that are hanging there. So this star has been there for about 200 years, and as I said, right there is the bedrock that you touch. This is a stained glass window in the church, not the one that the Greek Orthodox section, but in the Roman Catholic section. The scriptures say, while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Well, this spot over here is where there is a stone manger. And it is believed, tradition says, it's the manger that Jesus was placed in. Here, and it's honored. I know it's hard to see because they've tried to honor it so much with the lamps and everything over it, but in essence it looks much like this. These are stone mangers you find all over Israel, and you'll find them all over because, as I said, if you've ever dealt with cattle and livestock, they'll often eat the edges of a wooden feed bin and chew on it. But they won't do that with stone. And stone is plentiful and wood is not, as I said earlier. So they're very common. So it's highly likely that the manger that Jesus was laid in was probably made of stone. Now, as I said, the high altar was right under this section right here. And under the high altar, the high altar is under this section right here. And over here is a Roman Catholic church that has been built. It's fairly modern. And there's this beautiful courtyard here with a cloistered walkway all the way around. And this is the church where you will see Christmas celebrated when you talk about Christmas in Bethlehem. And all the officials from all over Israel are there. This is the church they come to. And a Christmas mass high mass on Christmas at midnight looks something like this. And there's all political officials sitting here and local officials and then priests and just so many people celebrating this service. I'm sure it'll be on again this Christmas, though how many people will be allowed in the church, I really don't know. This is that stained glass window I showed you earlier, and it shows the Jesus and Mary and Joseph, and because it's in the maintenance of the custody of the Franciscans, we have St. Francis right here. This is that beautiful courtyard I was telling you about with the cloistered walkway on either side, and the one I pointed out from the overhead shot. And here's another picture of that. Now this is Saint Jerome. His name is Hieronymus in Greek, but Jerome is his name, and he's quite famous because he had translated the Bible from Greek. The whole New Testament was originally written in Greek, and by the year 360 or so, 350, when Jerome was Bishop of Bethlehem, and lived in Bethlehem, Latin was becoming the common tongue. and so he translated. But he didn't do it alone. He had the help of two women, Paula, and who was a wealthy Roman patroness who had knew him when he was in Rome and moved with him to the Holy Land. And he founded an order of a priest here, and when he was bishop of Bethlehem, and she founded an order of nuns, and her daughter Eustacia, I never can pronounce her name, helped him. Now Paula and Eustacia were extremely educated, and they helped Jerome translate the Bible from Greek into Latin. And that Latin version of the Bible is called the Vulgate, coming from the Latin word for, we use it for vulgar, which means actually common, which he made it a derisive term in modern times, but it just used to mean it was the common tongue, the language everybody used, and the most common language by the year 350 was Latin. Greek was now a language of arts and academia outside of the nation of Greece. So this is where he lived. He actually lived in caves. He wanted to be very near the birthplace of Jesus. So he lived down in a cave. He lived down in the caves near the birthplace of Jesus. The caves actually reside under the Catholic Church, whereas the birthplace of Jesus resides under the larger ancient church that is shared by the Greek Orthodox and the Armenian Orthodox. The caves do connect, but there's a door between them, since one part is controlled by the Orthodox churches and one by the Roman Catholic, and it is opened at Christmas time. Now, one time, the reason I really like Jerome, but I want to tell you, one of the most, I don't remember, one of the last times I went to the Holy Land, probably, I don't remember, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe now, because I haven't been for about 4 years. I decided one evening, my group was tired, we were in Bethlehem the first day we arrived, and we had time. So everybody wanted to take a nap, and I decided I would walk over to the Church of the Nativity. And so I came up. This is the way, when it's not Christmas time, that Manger Square looks. They use it for parking. Not surprising in an urban area. Many places that used to be wonderful squares are now turned into parking areas. And so I went there, and I went into the church. There was, at this time, they were doing a lot of restoration work. And I go through, there was no line at all, which is unheard of. And I go into the church through the door of humility and went down into the crypt. And there was almost no one there, just a few people. I knelt and I prayed, and it was quite powerful, because it wasn't all the bustle and with all the pilgrims who usually come and file through thousands and thousands a day. Now, when I was finished there, I went over to the church of the Roman Catholic Church, and I descended into their grotto. The door that connects is actually off in this direction over here, but they have an altar and down there and a grotto close to it. And this area is where St. Jerome, and St. Jerome is buried right here. You see Hieronymus, St. Hieronymus, presbyter and ecclesiastical doctor. He's considered one of the doctors of the church, and he's also was a bishop. And so this is where he's buried. But also buried down here are Paula and I never can pronounce her name, Eustodium. Both mother and daughter are buried here. They were co-workers with Jerome. So it was down there, and there was absolutely nobody in this crypt, in this grotto. And I'm exploring it, and then all of a sudden, it goes pitch black. Why did it go pitch black? because somebody turned out the lights. They're closing the church. I didn't know what time the church closed. I'm stuck here in the dark. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You know, I mean, I didn't have a cell phone with me. I didn't have a signal anyway. And I don't think I had a cell phone. I don't know. All I know is I'm in the dark and I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of here? I can't see anything. You know how black it is in a cave in the dark? You know, a cave with no light? I mean, it's as black can be. So finally I figured, well, you know, if I'm stuck here till morning, my group is going to have plans to be here first thing in the morning. I guess when they open the church doors, they can let me out. And I said, come on, Kathy, there's got to be a way. So I started feeling around in the dark, and then I realized I have a camera with a flash. I don't have a phone that has a flashlight, but I have a camera with a flash. And so I flashed my flash, took a picture, and I got my bearings. And then I felt my way right over here, right past good old Hieronymus's grave, and Jerome's grave. Jerome and I, you know, got a little. I almost spent the night with Saint Jerome. You know, it's why I feel close to him. And so we went. I found my way back upstairs, and the funny thing is, when I got back upstairs, the door that I would usually exit was locked. So I went back into the main church, and a Greek Orthodox priest fussed at me, get out of here, what was I doing here? And I said I was downstairs when they turned out the lights. And no, you weren't, because I turned out the lights and I know no one was there. There was no arguing with him, but he did show me he did take me and let me get out. And so I ended up going back to my hotel and not spending the night in the Church of the Nativity. This is what Manger Square usually looks like. I mean, the area of Manger Square usually looks like right at Christmas time. This big platform here, that's where they're going to have groups from all over the world, choirs from all over the world will come throughout the whole Christmas season and will perform. And the people will gather. I don't know what it's going to be like this year because of COVID, but I know it is a wonderful thing. You know, it's very powerful to be able to go to the places where things of the events of the Bible actually happened. Be able to touch the places that perhaps Jesus may have touched, places he walked, to drink water from a well he drank from, like I did in Nazareth. All these different things, to walk up a hill that Mary walked on, and she went to go visit Elizabeth and Karam, to walk to the streets of a town, to see fields where shepherds stood when the angels announced, glory to God in the highest, and peace to the people on earth. Yes, it's a wonderful thing. I hope you've enjoyed our tour of the Holy Land, and God bless. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I have enjoyed sharing that with you. I love my travels, and I often enjoy talking about them, and so I'm so glad that you've been tuning in to listen. If you have any questions, please ask me. But it's now right before Christmas, and this is my 11th year. This Christmas season marks the beginning of my 12th year as your chaplain. I've completed 11 years, and it has been a wonderful experience. I want to thank each and every one of you. You have all been so important to me. May God bless you and keep you. May you have a wonderful Christmas season, holiday season, and may God bring us to a brighter and better new year.